This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
As they were finalizing their manuscript, Ronnie's daughter sent them a screen grab of an Instagram post from Jabby app that read, "Never underestimate a cycle breaker. Not only did they experience years of generational trauma, but they stood in the face of the trauma and fought to say, 'This ends with me.' This is brave. This is powerful. This comes at a significant cost. Never underestimate a cycle breaker." Ronni and Jennie read it and cried. A few weeks later, Ronnie found a post on Instagram from Xavier Dagba and sent it to Jennie. "All this time, you thought you were nothing but the black sheep of your lineage, whereas you were being initiated to be their liberator. Healing looks good on you. Keep going." Jennie cried and something in her shifted. These two amazing sisters started their journey with a sincere desire to spare their children the pain they had endured, to break the intergenerational cycle of abuse and addiction so that they could live beautiful lives. They also hoped that they could reparent themselves and live beautiful lives of their own. And they did, if imperfectly. Though they are still learning and growing, Ronni and Jennie have each created something well beyond what we could have imagined at the beginning of this ride. This means they are more than survivors. They are indeed rock stars. Valeria interviews Ronni Tichenor and Jennie Weaver, the authors of Healing Begins With Us, Breaking the Cycle of Trauma and Abuse and Rebuilding the Sibling Bond. Ronni Tichenor has a PhD in sociology, specializing in family studies from the University of Michigan, and Jennie Weaver has received her degree from the Vanderbilt School of Nursing and is a board-certified family nurse practitioner with over 25 years of experience in family practice and mental health. Their book, Healing Begins With Us, shares their inspiring and hopeful story of healing from their painful upbringing. Meet Ronni and Jennie at heartandsoulsisters.net. Here's the interview with Ronni Tichenor and Jennie Weaver.
In your own words, who is Ronni Tichenor and Jennie Weaver?
Well, Ronni Tichenor, I'm the oldest. I always get to go first.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I would say right now I'm transitioning. For a long time, I've worked in academia as a professor and taught about issues related to family and done research about, in particular, family dynamics and the impact of growing up with trauma and abuse and those kinds of dynamics in the home, what kind of impact that has on people moving through their lives. And at this point, I'm transitioning out of academia and just full-time wanting to do this work with my sister, where we can bring together some of the things we've done professionally, but also our personal experience of growing up in a home with addiction, abuse, and untreated mental illness. And we feel like telling our story about how we managed to sort of come out of that and rebuild our relationship with each other and find healing and break the cycle in our own families. Like there's so many people who are trying to do that. And we have just, for a number of years now, felt called to just speak our truth around this, just share our experience in the belief that can help someone else on their healing journey.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Jennie, it's your turn.
Yeah, and I'm Jennie Weaver and the younger sister. And I think where I am now is I'm continuing to work as a family nurse practitioner. And really, I think Ronni and I talk about this a lot, about just living as full a life as we can, living fully, authentically, all of who I am, all of who I am meant to be. And being an instrument of love and light in this world is really the focal of my, that's where my mind and heart are. So I look at that and how I relate to my patients in palliative care, how I relate to my children, my grandchildren, being present for anyone who comes into my life for that day, that moment. It's really important. I think that we remove our masks, and certainly I have worn many masks to try to survive the adverse childhood experiences that I experienced. But at this phase in my life, I want to live as open-hearted and fully, as full of expression of who I am in physical form as possible, and to be just a being of love and light to everyone I meet. And that's really so important to me now.
Yes, and it comes across that way. It's truly beautiful to listen to both of you. This intention, it's almost beyond intention now, because I always think about impact, because I have had the experience of trying too hard with my intentions, but it was the impact that really mattered. I remember trying to change people around me in my own way, but then they were not really receptive or open. And that was not really coming across the right way. So it's really the impact and the presence. There's something about you two that's really powerful, though. And because it's close to my family too, my husband, as I mentioned. So that's I think that's what it is. It brings up this feeling of, again, of wanting to do something about it. But I know that, not that I cannot, I could help if they were open. So I would love to hear, actually, before I have that question, I have way too many questions now here. Before that, are you planning to coach, both of you, coach others we need? Like in my case, my husband, if he were open, would you coach him to start the healing process within his family?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
We've talked about that quite a bit, that we would love to work with people who, I mean, we've done a number of things. As you know, we've created a podcast people can listen to. We've written a book, kind of, generally telling our stories, but that is a goal for us in the short term rather than long term, I would say, is that we'd like to make ourselves available. And that's part of my transitioning out of the job I've had for years in academia, is creating more time in my life to do that sort of thing. We know there are people who might feel like some people can take in information really well by reading and apply it and do a lot with it. Others feel like they need more individual or one-on-one attention. And so that is something that we would love to do, because we've come to think of ourselves kind of as guides, right? We're not people that have all the answers or anything, but we've seen a lot of stuff. We've been through a lot of stuff. We've been doing this for a lot of years. And so we feel like we do have a lot to offer someone who is genuinely seeking, whether it's, I'm just starting to realize I had these issues in my family, and now what do I do? Or, okay, I realize it and I've got some information, but I don't know what to do with it and how to apply it. Or I've been doing this for a lot of years and I feel like I've reached a plateau. What can I do now? So at those crucial moments, sort of guiding people can be really helpful. I mean, we certainly had different folks along the way that mattered for us, that worked with us and helped us in that way. So it's interesting you asked that, because we actually do want to do that.
Okay. That's wonderful to know. And that information will be on your website when it happens,
yes.
right, Ronni?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I didn't mention the book yet. The title is Healing begins with us breaking the cycle of trauma and abuse and rebuilding the sibling bond. So we had a conversation about your book, and it was a fun one, meaningful one, about, I think, 3 months ago. I'm not sure about the time, but that I have some of the information here still. The title for this episode that came to me, it was inspired by the end of your book, Cycle Breakers and Family Liberators. That caught my attention. Beautiful. It was actually, it came, I think it was you were inspired by messages from social media, I believe. Some people who left a message there. And I have that.
Yes.
The introduction, I had to have that. I had to. It was just so powerful. Cycle breakers and family liberators. So I want to ask a question to Jennie. Yes, you mentioned removing the masks. So what is like to live without a mask? And what is a mask? What is using a mask?
Oh, I think we all use masks, to hide our feelings, to hide our vulnerabilities. And so some of us might hide behind our titles, our education, our, personality traits. Certainly as a mascot, one of the roles that I played was, using humor to diffuse tension and to make people laugh before, they got too close. It's a way of disarming a situation or disarming people. So lots of different masks that we can wear that keep people away from the heart, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the masks. The masks are, building the walls around the heart and putting the masks on are all part of coping mechanisms that we learn to keep from being injured more. And so really the masks don't really protect you from the injuries. It just keeps you isolated more. It keeps people from knowing who you fully are. And it keeps you from living a heart-centered life, really. I think it's much more fulfilling to live with a heart open life than walling off your heart. And I would rather live my life, what's left of it, in a heart-centered and open-hearted way than to continue to hide all of who I am in the hopes of preventing more injury.
Yes,
because that's a sad way to live. Really, when you're living with masks and you're living with a walled-off heart, you're living in fear. You're living in a state of survival mode. You're not living fully.
True. So true. For me, the challenge, I guess, when it comes to the expression of that, it's interesting the way you put it, living without a mask or being heart-centered, living with an open heart. It's how do we, because it seems like we are very much, as humans, is a fundamental truth to connect with others. And for me, the challenge has been being truthful and kind at the same time. And it doesn't work a lot of times. I see that with my husband, with my family, my sister, my brother. It doesn't really work with some of them, even though I try, but it doesn't work. They still become defensive. So what would you do within those cases? Would you rather even not express yourself, your heart to others, and kind of doing something about it, perhaps? Yeah, I would love to hear from you.
Certainly I'm not without my own challenges
Yes.
in some of my closer relationships. And so what I try to do is lead by saying, I feel this, I see this. And I certainly do my best to not offer advice. It's really hard to do that, especially with children and grandchildren. And so, I oftentimes will look to my sister Ronni and say, I don't know, I'm at a loss on this one, but this is what I feel like I need to say. Or this is what I said. And really, I think if you are just honest with your loved one, your friend, your whoever, and just say, I want to understand, or I want to connect, or I want to share my feelings about this, because I feel that by being silent, if they come to me and they're talking to me about any topic, if I am silent, then I am endorsing whatever they're saying or doing. And if I feel strongly about sharing, well, this is what I'm concerned about for you, then I have to share that by saying, I'm feeling very uncomfortable with X, Y, or Z, and this is why. This is what I'm feeling about it. These are my concerns. And wording it that way, I'm not saying that it's received, 100% with, oh, good, I'm glad you shared that with me,
Yes,
but,
right.
but at least they know that I'm leading from my heart. They know I love them. And I also try to make it a point of saying, I am talking about discernment here. I'm talking about what I am witnessing, what I am experiencing, what I'm seeing. And it's not a judgment. That is just I'm concerned about this, not this is right or this is wrong or this is good or this is bad. I really don't think in those terms. I think more about, is something going on that might harm you, or is something going on that might harm this other loved one that we're all connecting with? I'm thinking more in terms of, are we contributing to their well-being, or are we causing any harm here? And so those are my concerns, is that we try to eliminate the behaviors or the words that we're using that could cause harm, and that we are coming from a place of loving acceptance of each other. We all are allowed to live our lives the way we choose, what is best for us. But certainly, I think that we're also here to encourage each other and to also help each other when we see that there is something going on that may be causing injury to one another. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to speak up and to do it in the most loving, conscious way that we can.
Yes.
I'm not saying I'm perfect at that, but that is my goal.
Yeah. And it comes through, though, listening to you. I love how, I have to say that, I love how kind you sound. Because who doesn't love kindness? You probably have heard or seen the quote that says that even it's the language that blind can see and
Yes.
deaf can hear. Kindness.
Yes.
That's true. So, Ronni, I do have a question for you as well about mental health. How do you define mental health these days? What is to be mentally healthy?
Oh, wow. I guess I would speak for myself, and as I think about my own mental health. Certainly, it's one of the foundations of my mental health is the ability to put my needs first. Maybe not in every single case, but most of the time, right? So my need to sleep, my need to eat well, my need to get exercise. For years, I've developed a practice where I get up first thing in the morning and I meditate and I practice yoga and I get in some kind of physical activity, cardio activity. And I've always done that. I shouldn't say always, but for decades I have. I say I take my time off the top of my day. So I do it first so that I know that I get it. And sometimes that means I've been getting up really, really early, especially when my daughter was younger, and maybe my husband would leave for work early in the morning. And so I would get up early to make sure I could get it done before he left for work. Cause he always left before I did, those kinds of things. So meeting my needs, function, sleep, food, exercise, meditation, yoga, those kinds of things. And then it's balancing for most of us if we're living particularly in family units, and if we have caregiving responsibilities to children or to aging parents or that sort of thing. We always have to make sure that we are in the mix, that we are taking care of ourselves. And then just continuing to work on my recovery. That's my other mental health. I mean, I was listening to Jennie talk, and one of the things I've had to work on is that I had real perfectionist tendencies as a young person. And part of that is judging myself harshly, but also judging other people harshly. And so I used to joke with the family, particularly as our kids got older. I would say, I'm a package deal. I am bossy and judgmental.
Oh, wow. Yes.
So it's sort of trying to unwind that, being less concerned about what other people are doing, having fewer opinions about what other people are doing, so whatever it is, if you're someone out there listening who's on your own recovery path, where your issues are. And so continuing to be honest about them, approach yourself with some humility, but also with kindness and compassion, because even if you didn't grow up in a more extreme situation of childhood trauma or abuse, just being in this world, everybody takes hits, and so we're all trying to recover from a bully in elementary school or an unfortunate love relationship in our teens or whatever. So we're all trying to heal those wounds in some way. And so just recognizing where we are vulnerable, where we do feel like there's room for growth, and continuing to pursue that growth, but in a really compassionate way, right? Giving ourselves a break, giving ourselves grace when we fall into a pattern again that we've been trying to break. Just for me, balance in taking care of myself versus taking care of others, and balance in trying to continue to grow as a person, but giving myself space to be human and being loving about the times when I fall short of whatever mark I might set for myself.
Yes. Beautifully said. Self-care, self-love, balance. I love the sense of humor part of it too. I mean, I think was that intentional? But
Yes, it was. Yes, it was absolutely. Yeah. Making fun of myself, yes, absolutely helps.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, tell me about it. Although I see my husband, he does that more than I do, and I thought it made me think about what Jennie said earlier about the way that we try to cover up the masks that we use, even using sense of humor, which there's a difference, right, Jennie and Ronni, between trying, I think they call it disassociation. There's a name for in psychology. I just interviewed somebody about it that I forgot the name that he mentioned. Yeah, they actually use a term when that is being sense of humor is being used as a way of distancing other people from getting to know you.
Yes.
Which is very different when it comes from healing. It's so different. Would you like to add something, Jennie, to this topic of mental health and what that is?
Oh, I think Ronni did a great job. I think really, really honoring yourself, loving yourself, and trying to find that balance is so important, especially for those of us who were taught to negate and ignore our needs and even our pain. So it's very important, I think, to find that balance of putting your needs first at times. And you talk about you have to fill your cup so you can pour out into others, right?
Right.
And that is very true.
Yes, and I agree. And I noticed that even for me, it's not easy sometimes to separate the self-care, self-love from being selfish, because that can be perceived that way by other people. And I know I have not really been able to, let's say, not feel guilty about it when I say no to my husband or people in my family. So I'm wondering if I think we talked about this before, I'm not sure, but do you have that feeling? Do those feelings still come up of guilt?
Oh, heavens, yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because certainly, this is Jennie again. We were certainly conditioned that our needs, our feelings, our pain didn't matter, and therefore we were not taught at all how to nurture ourselves, what self-love and self-care was. We had absolutely no training in that area, really. And so that was a very hard fought lesson for me in particular. In my early years of marriage and being a mother, I felt like my children had to come first. And I was, running myself into the ground, really. And so I certainly, I think, maybe struggled with saying no, more so than Ronni did in my earlier years. And I was an overachiever in my own right of going to school and volunteering at church and community things. And, people saw, oh, Jennie's getting it done. Let's see if Jennie can get this done for us. And I had a really hard time saying no. I was overextended, certainly at times. And that's something that I'm very good at saying now. Is no, thank you. Appreciate you thinking of me, but no, thank you. I give you the gift of no. No.
Great. Oh my God.
And that's so important because it's there are plenty of people out there with talents and gifts to share, and we need to be generous and allow them to share them.
Yes. I also heard somebody say something just a few weeks ago about how they had this friend who never did anything she didn't want to do. Like if she didn't want to do it, she would just say, no, thank you. That's not my cup of tea. And she said, and this person who was telling the story said, one of the things I really love about this friend is that I know whenever we're together and we're doing something, that she's 100% there. I never have to wonder if she did this out of a feeling of obligation or a feeling of guilt or some sort of pressure. So it really is kind of a gift to give people when you say no, because they're like, well, okay, then I won't have somebody reluctantly along resenting it the whole time, dragging my energy down, So I love that reframe, that saying no to the things you really don't want to do means that when you say yes, you are fully there and you're all in.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to think about it that way now.
Wow, I love that. I never heard it that way. That's so true. Wow, and I can say that has been my case because I was really bad at saying no, and I'm still am, but not now. It's much more conscious. Yeah, it became almost like it comes from a sense of freedom. It's because it seems like I have more space to share, so it's easy to say yes to something that I feel like maybe, and not feel resentful about it. So I noticed that too. In some cases, not all cases, of course. Wow, that must be a challenge. I mean, an interesting challenge with children for you both. I can only imagine. I'm not a mother. Wow.
Yeah.
Right. How do you say no to children when sometimes you want to say yes, but that won't help them? They need to learn on their own, or for some other reasons you have to say no, or say yes when you mean to say no. So that's a different topic, I would say, for now. But wow, I can only imagine. You just made me curious about it. So I want to go back to yes. So the book Healing Begins with Us. That's the book that you have written. So you are two sisters and survivors who found healing from a tragic cycle of intergenerational trauma and abuse. And the book is based on the podcast conversations that you had. So I'm reading this here because this is the brief information I have for now. Of course, I have a lot more here, but just for this moment at this time, please share a little bit more about the book without all the details, of course, and also some insights that you have gained, perhaps even during writing the book, but it didn't make the book. You didn't include in a book for some reason. And probably if you did include in the book, you won't share, but who knows? I have to ask the question. And then also some insights that were revealed to you after the book was published in 2022. For both of you, either way.
Okay, well, I'll give sort of an overview of our story. So I'm Ronni, I'm the oldest. Jennie is the youngest, and there's a brother in between us. When we write the book, we don't use any names except the names of our husbands. We just for their privacy, because we're not telling the story to wound anybody. We're trying to tell it to help people. So we had the brother in the middle, and we, like many dysfunctional families, particularly families with addiction problems, we as kids were kind of cast into very specific roles. So as the oldest, I was the hero. Jennie was the youngest; she was the scapegoat. And later the mascot, and our brother was the classic middle, silent, invisible child. And so as the hero, my job was to be a really high achiever, to make the family look good, essentially, right? If anybody ever suspected something was wrong with our family, they could point to me, the hero, and say, oh no, look at this great kid we produced. There's nothing wrong with us. And then conversely, the scapegoat, Jennie, gets all the psychic garbage of the family dumped on them. They are a problem. She was lazy. She was slow. She was, all these terrible things. And our brother's job as the middle child was, the silent one was just to disappear, was not to make any demands of our parents and just kind of blob along through life. And then Jennie took on another role. There are others that people can take on, but the hero and the scapegoat are the two main ones. And then Jennie referred to the mascot, which is the child that, again, often this is a younger child. Their job is to be cute, to distract, to be humorous, so that, again, take the minds off the troubles in the family, or to diffuse the tension in the family. And so we played these roles very, very well into adulthood. It wasn't until we were in our late 20s, we had married and started having children, that we started to connect with each other. Because growing up, the dynamics in the family are just so complex when there's all this kind of abuse going on. And the kids are often pitted against each other, which we were. Jennie and I were not particularly close growing up. Not to say we didn't have some good times together or do things together, but we just didn't have a warm, close relationship. But we were not satisfied with that. We knew we wanted to be better, but we didn't know how to do that. One of the reasons we had trouble doing that was because our mother used to triangulate the communication between us. So we would talk to her, and then she would tell us about each other and didn't always tell us the truth about each other. Mm-hmm. So we would still be pitted against each other. And so once we had children, we decided, being good mothers was really important to us. And since we were both sort of going through this at a similar time, we got married within 2 years of each other, had our first child within 17 months of each other. We started talking about, oh my gosh, this is what the baby's doing, and I just don't know. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And because we were trying to do things so different. And so we started talking about our childhood and what was done to us. And it was over years of these kinds of conversations that we started to realize, oh, they were abusive, right? Emotionally, physically. And it was, after that, then it was realizing that the dad had an addiction problem and there was some untreated mental illness. And so it was a really long, slow realization process for us. And once we did, we tried to be open and honest, and we wanted to be the close, warm, loving, happy family that we had told ourselves we were, but we weren't. We tried to get our parents and brother to see what was going on and to pursue healing with us, counseling as a family, etc. They lost their minds, our parents in particular. The abuse escalated, particularly towards Jennie, who as a scapegoat would be the most likely target. And then we eventually came to the conclusion that we had to sever contact with our parents and our brother. And so we did. We've had a little bit of brief contact with them at different points, but no contact at all for the last 13 years. So,
yes.
And then in terms of what that journey has been like, Jennie.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
What that journey has been like, my gosh. It has been, it has really been, I think the easiest way to put it is you as you're waking up out of denial, you are basically looking at your life from a completely different lens and realizing that who you are has been completely hijacked into fulfilling a role that was needed by the addicted, abusive, mentally ill parents that you were born to. And so you start questioning everything. You start questioning, who am I really? What do I really want out of life? What is important to me? What matters? And so it's as you're waking up, I really consider it a waking up from denial out of this sleepwalking you've been doing, this conditioning that you've had since infancy. And really you are constantly questioning everything.
Yeah.
Every aspect of your life. And really, I got to say the safety net for me was my really loving and supportive husband who said, "You're a beautiful person. You may be in counseling and trying to sort all this stuff out, but you're still a beautiful person.
Yeah.
You're still a wonderful person." And my sister, and of course her wonderful husband. And they were really, the three of them really were my safety net of reality check too.
Mm-hmm.
Because you really start wondering, wow, what fully happened and how do I navigate this now? And while we were coming out of our denial, we were fairly newly-wed couples and were having young children.
Small children. Yeah.
Young children. And so it's an identity crisis for sure.
Yeah.
And that is no lightweight task to work your way through. And so certainly for me, counseling was incredibly helpful. I mean, I was probably in and out of counseling for I don't know, maybe 4 years, would go for 6 months, would maybe at a time, would take a little break, go back for, another 9 months to a year, take another break. I mean, it was this, just trying to sort through more. And for me, part of it was sorting through memories and trying to make sense of, is this really as bad as I think it is?
Right. And that's where the two of us joining forces made such a difference. And that's one of the things that motivated us to want to tell our story, is that because there were things that I was trying to convince myself did not happen the way I remembered them. I was gaslighting myself. It couldn't possibly have been as that. That couldn't possibly have happened because that is just awful and cruel. There must have been something else that was going on that I can't remember or was not aware of. And I would share a memory like that with Jennie, and she'd go, "Oh, no, that's exactly how it went down."
And then this is what happened afterward. Yeah.
Yes.
This was
so
the next
it's like,
step.
oh my God. But I think Jennie just hit on an important answer to part of what you asked us, Valeria, and that is, what did we put together in a different way that maybe we didn't emphasize as much in the book, but became clearer after we put the book out? And that is this idea of identity crisis. Like, it really is an identity crisis when you come out of denial about having grown up in an abusive, addicted family, because you've been told who you are. The only validation you get as a child is in playing your role properly, which means that's what you do. And so it's like, well, if I'm not the hero, who am I really? And so I had created all this anxiety and, the perfectionism patterns of behavior that I knew were a problem long before I knew why they were a problem. And, another thing I discovered after we wrote the book is Jennie has been very honest in her struggles with anxiety and depression her entire life, is for as long as she can remember. She's talked about in the podcast, she talked about in the book. And I've always felt bad that I've not struggled in that way. And it wasn't until after we put the book out, I thought, oh, wait a minute, what is perfectionism but anxiety? Like,
Yes.
if you're not highly anxious, there's no reason to try to be perfect.
God.
So, so it's one of those things where it was part of the hero. I felt like I was high functioning. I can do it. I can do anything, and it wasn't, and it was so silly for me to realize that I had been living with anxiety my whole life and not knowing it. I had never been diagnosed or had medication or anything like that because it was so normal to me. Yeah. It didn't feel like something was wrong. It's just the way I lived,
Hypervigilance.
So, yeah.
You live in a state of fight or flight all the time.
Yeah. So
you don't know any different.
So it really is true that it's a good question you asked, Valeria, that there were things that came into a different focus for us.
Oh, goodness.
As a result of doing the book, and then even after the book came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Wow, listening to you, it's beautiful. And at the same time, there's this this feeling of sadness, because I know it's what I've been through as well, and so many people I know and I speak with, so many people around me. So I guess the a big picture question for now within this topic of suffering, of pain, and then trying to heal from the pain, and then finding ourselves again, is how do you make sense of all this in the sense of suffering? Why do we suffer? Do you go back to spirituality? Do you find answers there? Or have you found, where did you find an answer for that, if you have one? For both of you.
So Jenny and I have both come to believe in reincarnation, that we come for multiple lifetimes to learn lessons. And the ultimate lesson is just how to love. I wouldn't go so far. I know there's some people that say, well, look what you did. You did this great thing with the pain that you experienced in your childhood, and therefore it's somehow great that it worked out this way, like it was meant to be. Or I don't know. Sometimes people have these really predestined ideas, like you signed up for this lesson. Well, I signed up for lessons, but I did not sign up to be abused, right? So people have free will. They get to make choices. And they don't always make good choices. I don't always make good choices. I think I'm a good person. I know I don't always make good choices. So I think that the suffering comes from the imperfection in human beings. And I also have a real hard time with the whole, we all do the best we can at the time. Granted, some of us have limited understanding, and so they don't know what they're doing. But I know I have not personally done my best in all situations. And I've been conscious of it in the moment, like I'm being bratty or I'm being demanding or whatever. And I have not found it within me to stop myself. So I don't like that either. I know that our parents, we know that in terms of what we experienced, we come from a long line of intergenerational trauma. And so we have compassion for our parents and what they experienced. But I mean, at the bare minimum, when we told them how they were hurting us and begged them to stop, and they escalated the abuse, that is not doing your best.
No.
That is not excused by experiencing intergenerational trauma.
No.
So we are, I guess at this point, it's...
And I have to say...
Go ahead.
That any time that an adult does things behind closed doors,
right,
out of the view of other people, they know what they are doing is wrong. And that was done to us over and over and over again. So on that count,
mm-hmm,
I have to hold our parents accountable, because they knew on some level, every time, what they did was wrong.
Yeah.
Or they would not have felt the need to hide it. And that's an important point for people to remember. And I do also take issue, I gotta say, with people that say, but look at all the good that you have done with what was done to you, because that completely negates how our lives were hijacked and the incredible amount of suffering that any survivor has to overcome.
Yeah.
It comes at a tremendous cost to the survivor. And so I think it's important to give the survivors credit for the work that they are doing and continuing to do, to be loving presence in human form.
Yeah, in their
because
own lives. Right.
It is at a tremendous cost and with tremendous effort.
It is so true, so true, so true. Yes, and why can I say enough? I agree a billion% with the both of you. Yes. And I call it ignorance. And it's not ignorance in the sense of pejorative, but it's really ignoring what is true, what is here, which it is present all the time, in the sense that we are connected, that we share a reality here. It was so clear to me as a child, even seeing that. Like, how come? My parents were so abusive, and I was trying to make peace within that, because I didn't understand. As a child, I didn't understand. And it doesn't have to be this way. Because I could sense that, like, we are the same. although we are not the same mentally, but that was the way I tried to make sense of all this in the very beginning. Now it's really seen clearly that it is the byproduct of ignorance, all the violence we see, the unkindness. It really is. And I have to say, it's spiritual. I always go to spirituality because that's how I found myself. Not who I am, but what I am, which is the reality that's shared with everyone. That's it. It's very clear to me. But I wonder why it's not clear for some of us, because I do not believe that we are. It's one reality. So it's one God. It's one life. So, oh yes, wow, there's a storm here. I love everything about even the storms, which is interesting, like in the sense of embrace and everything as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we do have to embrace, as a child, I had to embrace the violence as it was, on the darkness as it was happening, because I had no way out of that.
No,
Right.
we had to survive it. Yeah.
Right. Going back to reincarnation, this idea, and I do kind of have a feeling that, something continues. But I wonder if we could choose to be free from suffering in this lifetime and then be liberated from it.
So I guess I don't know enough about the teachings of reincarnation to know what any particular person would say about that. Based on my feeling based on all the different reading that I've done is that we are continuing to learn in this plane, and we keep coming back to learn. And once we have reached some sort of mark, then we graduate to another dimension. I have no idea what that looks like. I don't know if that means we are helping to guide others who are in the physical plane. Certainly, yogic tradition is that you continue to develop until you go back to source, go back to the creator. I don't know. But I do agree with you, Valeria, that I think that it is about spiritual development. I think that if you do have that sense of true connection with your fellow beings, then not that makes you a perfect person, but it certainly keeps you from the greater cruelty, I think, that many people engage in.
It's our illusion of separateness that causes us to treat each other so harshly, so cruelly.
Yeah.
It's if we recognize that we are truly all drops of water in the same ocean, we really are all interconnected. We really are all one. And if we recognize that, then you don't see the road rage. You don't see you don't have this illusion of separateness. Yes, we have our own individual personalities and experiences that we are meant to experience in this life, but we truly are all connected.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly there's, if you get into quantum physics and reading about, how experiments of people sending love from their heart to another person's heart, literally energy is being transmitted.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a beautiful, example in his science has showed us of how we truly are all connected energetically, and we matter to each other, and that's why I truly believe that we can uplift the entire planet just by trying to uplift ourselves, by trying to love more, by trying to love ourselves more, and those lives around us that we touch.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a ripple effect.
Yes. Again, a trillion times to that. To me, that's where we need help with, really, spirituality, going deeper into what we are. And this interesting thing is, when I know you mentioned identity, that in a sense, the deeper you go, and then you find out what you are, then who you are doesn't really matter. That identity just gets lost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't really matter. For me, it has been the case. And it's just being present to what is present and doing the things that is just I'm called to do. But it doesn't feel, even like I said to you before about saying yes to something that I meant to say maybe or no, doesn't feel like a burden anymore. It used to. Now it's like, it's all right. And there's that sense of freedom in it. And it's not free will. If what we are essentially is freedom, then free will would apply only to those who believe they are separate. They believe they're doing something on their own. Although it is another illusion, as you said, Jennie, the word illusion, that's what it is. Free will, to me, it is an illusion that's coming from the separate self, the one who believes is separate from life itself, which is freedom. So, gosh, you just got me going with this one. I'll go forever. Spirituality is what healing spirituality is one and the same to me. It's going to that destination, if it is one. And speaking of that, what does healing feel like these days? Like this process is still happening. And what does it feel like for you? What's healing now? Because you sound healed to me, both of you.
Well, it's funny because, it's what you just said. It's freedom. Mm. It's not being, our reactions are not, well, I guess I don't know that we'll ever be free totally from what we experienced and some of the conditioning associated with it. But it's not, being free from kind of the knee-jerk reactions that we, worked to overcome most of our adult life. It's being free to express who we are, being free to choose what we feel called to do as opposed to what we think we ought to do or what we think somebody else thinks we ought to do. It is, and it's being a more loving person, knowing that when I interact with someone, that I am a positive presence with them in that moment. All of those things to me are markers of healing.
Yes. And healing, understanding that healing is ongoing for us to, for example, an hour and a half ago, we were doing aura energy clearing on each other. When we get together, this is something we do for each other. And we are allowing Source, God, to guide us in this healing that we do for each other in our energy bodies and our physical body. And recognizing that we are free to explore whatever healing we feel called to, whatever the next step is.
Right.
And honoring that, honoring who we are fully, living, I think, as fully as we can day to day. The fullest and truest expression of ourselves. That's healing to me. Embracing all of who we are without fear, without feeling the need to hide anything.
That's a big part of our talking about this, writing the book, the podcast is releasing. Like we've hidden this part of our history for so long because nobody wants to hear about it, right? Shame is heaped on trauma survivors of any kind. And so just talking about, just writing about, just speaking about it in the podcast is a way of saying, we're doing this differently. We're okay. There's nothing wrong with us. Mm-hmm. And not only can we talk about it, we want to talk about it because we are convinced it will help other people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you are. Gosh, you have made a huge impression in the body-mind in this case.
Thank you.
And I make a distinction between the body-mind because they're not separate, but they tend to kind of carry those imprints. And some of them are not, we cannot be erased. Even the body itself, the only way not to be here, how can we not be here physically? We are here. We can delete that from this reality. So it keeps going. But I love the idea that we can bring the flavor of that freedom to the body-mind. That's what you're doing. That's the work of healing, what it does. Because it can be felt. It's incredible how I felt the first time we talked here and then today and before. This energy, it's very powerful. And it seems like something in me, it's kind of connecting your healing energy from what you went through to similar patterns of energy around me, which it has to be my own, probably from body, mind too, of course. And then my husband and then his family and my own family in Brazil. So it's interesting, like all this it comes alive again, but in under the beautiful light of healing, of love, of kindness. So thank you for bringing this back, because I don't often do that. I'm a student of Vedanta, it's a Hindu spiritual philosophy. So I kind of keep myself focused on the absolute, on part of everything that's peaceful, that's clear, that's pure. So I always keep the mind is focused on that, and rarely kind of wander in other realms like this. Only when I have the invitation. And thank you for inviting the energies here. So it feels really amazing.
Thank you so much for that,
Thank you
Valeria.
so much.
Yeah,
Valeria.
the heart opens. That's what it is. It's beautiful to see that. So we are almost at the end, and I'm not sure, did we address those two questions? I know you had the main questions about how did you both manage to build healthy partnerships with your husbands, and then also ending the cycle of suffering within your own children. And of course, a question that doesn't want, it's still coming up for me is, did your mother, father, and brother, did they ever read the book?
I don't know that they know we published it, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's the answer to that question. Good.
yeah.
It was short. What about those two questions? The main topics, actually, because now I had the notes here, but then, like I mentioned before, I just kind of love being spontaneous in the moment, and new questions came up. But did we address the topic of managing to have a healthy relationships with your husbands, and also now how did you both end the cycle of parenting, of suffering abuse with your own children? Yes, those 2 points.
Oh, I think we touched on them.
I think we did
right?
touch them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we addressed both of them. Because sometimes I have to make notes of everything. Because if I don't, I just kind of, it's like you probably have heard of the Zen Buddhism, they say, done and forgotten. It's so easy to just say something about, whatever's here, and then I forget, just forget the rest. and maybe that's what also it's, I don't know, it's easier for me to have fun, and kind of joy arises more often. It might be the case though, like, although I have been through lots of abuse with my parents, I talk to them almost every day. That rarely arises, that feeling of no more resentment, nothing comes up actually, unless we start talking about that, which I never do. Has been 10 years now without even having, because I know if I did mention anything, then I know they are in denial, and I know everything, it would just turn into something else. So I guess I would love to hear from you, like in people who listen to this episode, and they are in my situation where I'm still in contact with my family, although I know they didn't change. Is that something that, you actually not recommend, but what do you think about that? Is that something that only people who are involved in spirituality, practices like I do, which is only turning my attention to the absolute, which is pure, there's nothing really happening there, that allows me to kind of relate to everyone as at the same level, just forget everything that happened in the past, and everything becomes new and clean and clear to me for some reason. That's how it's happening. So talk to me for a moment about that, if you don't mind.
Well, we actually tried that. I mentioned that we had intermittent contact with our parents, and we tried to, okay, can we just have a conversation? We'll set aside what happened in the past, and maybe our relationship will be very superficial since we can't really talk about these things that are so substantial. Can we just exchange pleasantries? Let me know what's going on in your life. I'll tell you about mine, etc. And they just wouldn't allow it. They kept talking about how much pain we had caused them by breaking contact with them in the first place, and they just escalated the abuse, particularly the emotional abuse of Jennie, and it just got to the point where we realized it wasn't feasible, because we wanted to be clear that we had exhausted every possible alternative for maintaining contact with them. And they just they couldn't meet us at that point. So I can see why someone would do that. I wanted to do that because I did not want them, they're both still alive. I did not want them to die and feel like I had been a horrible daughter who, didn't try hard enough to find a way to still have a relationship with them. I now have peace about that because I tried over and over and over. They would call me and say, "We don't understand." And I would explain to them over and over and over. And they just continued to be angry and to mistreat us. They just would not do what you are describing. Just let's put the past in the past and just try to see if we can have a relationship now. They wouldn't have it. So they didn't leave us an alternative, really.
Yes, it's very different. It is. I guess also what it's easier for the body mind in my case is that they are far from me. They are in Brazil. I'm in Florida. So it's just really communication by phone. And like you said, Ron, it's true. It's very superficial, the relationship. It's not.
Yeah.
I can't go into any deep conversations with them about anything. So yes, I guess I'm coming also from the place where whatever's been called, so they keep calling me and contacting me, and they're not bringing up the past in the sense of they're not trying to abuse me from here. So that's really, it makes it easier to, I would say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I would say people need to protect themselves. They need to do what they feel they have to protect themselves, their children, their partners, whoever it is they are in relationship with.
Right. Yeah, so has been the case. And I know they keep inviting me to go to Brazil to go to visit them, but there's something about my body and it doesn't really respond positively. So it's a call, also is a calling to just not be around them physically. So I know that's not, it won't happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
I would like to end the podcast with a question. So let's see. I remember asking you the question about, I guess I'll ask you this open question about if there's one message you wish everyone to take with them, to remember, to contemplate, to reflect upon from this conversation, what would that be? So one for you, Ronni, and one for you, Jennie.
The one message.
Yes, if there is one.
I guess I would say for someone who is in a similar situation, who is trying to heal from family trauma or abuse, is that, and this kind of comes full circle to what we talked about at the beginning, is that it is okay to take care of yourself, whatever that means. If it means distancing yourself from family members, if it means cutting off contact with family members, doing it for a while you kind of sort things out and then figuring out how you want to bring people back, whatever it is. Jennie talked earlier about feeling called to try things, experiment, read new books, go seek out a therapist, look for spiritual ways to heal, look at energy healing. I mean, anything that seems intriguing to you, in the least, try it, because it may be your higher self, guides, whomever, sort of giving you a clue. Let's take a look here, and because we have found that healing can come in the most unusual ways and places.
True.
Yes, absolutely.
Love that. Yeah.
And I think that I would encourage people to come back to your heart. Trust your heart. If you've grown up with adverse childhood experiences, then you've been living in a state of hypervigilance, fight or flight, survival mode, and you've been living out of a place of fear. And so if anything will help you heal in the most expansive and peaceful way, and that would be to follow your heart. Your heart knows what it is longing for, which is peace and love, and your heart will guide you. So trust your heart.
Wow. I'm like overwhelmed with your wisdom, your timeless wisdom to me, spiritual wisdom. Wow, you ladies are beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much for being
Thank you so much.
So are you. You are beautiful.
You are a beautiful soul. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. What's the best place to find more information about you? I do have the website here, but besides the website.
So the website, so people can follow us on Instagram. And if they go to the link in our bio, we have a link to our website, to our podcast, to our book, to short articles that we've written that have offered tips on healing, reviews of our book, all different kinds of things. So if they find us on Instagram, Ronni and Jennie, Ronni and Jennie, Jennie, that link in our Instagram bio gets them everything.
Wonderful. Yeah, I have that link here. And I also have the website, heartandsoulsisters.net. So that will be under the podcast profile. Thank you so much again for your presence. And we'll talk soon. Bye for now, Jennie and Ronni.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Be
much. Many blessings.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Ronni Tishner and Jennie Weaver and their work, please visit heartandsoulsisters.net.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.